The sympathetic nervous system is hyperactive in fibromyalgia. And in my medical opinion, this abnormality is what causes a chain reaction that leads to all the other symptoms that we think of with fibromyalgia. Things like tense and painful muscles and poor sleep, fatigue, and brain fog. One of the most important ways we know that the fibromyalgia stress response system is so broken is from abnormal heart rate variability studies. At least 14 different studies and 2 systematic review articles have reported low heart rate variability in fibromyalgia compared to high heart rate variability in healthy people. Low heart rate variability basically reflects excessive sympathetic or fight or flight nervous system activity. It sounds more complicated than it is, so I'm going to explain it here in plain language for you. I'm Dr. Ginevra. I'm a physician with fibromyalgia myself, and I've dedicated my career to understanding and helping others with this incredibly frustrating illness that we call fibromyalgia. I share my findings with you here in my book, The FibroManual, and in my research library. Heart rate variability testing can show us whether our nervous system is in the fight or flight mode or not. Another way to say that is it can tell us how activated our sympathetic nervous system is compared to our parasympathetic nervous system. These are 2 different branches of what's called the autonomic nervous system or the autopilot nervous system. It controls most of those bodily functions that happen all the time without us thinking about it. Things like blood pressure and heart rate, breathing, digestion, sleep, urination. This autopilot nervous system consists of these 2 different sets of nerves that reach out to every nook and cranny in the body and usually have opposing functions once they get there. The sympathetic nervous system prepares the body for action. It's often compared to the accelerator in a car. It tenses the muscles and dilates the pupils and increases the heart rate. It's called the fight or flight response because it helps prepare our body to run away from danger, to fight or flee. In comparison, the parasympathetic nervous system prepares our body to rest. It relaxes muscles and slows the heart rate and increases digestion. Normally, that's where we should be living. Our nervous system should mostly be the autopilot should mostly be in the rest and digest mode, only really switching into the fight or flight mode when there's a need. But in fibromyalgia, our body stays in that fight or flight mode all the time. Even when there is no danger, there is nothing that we need to fight or flee, but our nervous system constantly feels like there is. And this is referred to as sympathetic hyperactivity or sympathetic dominance. And looking at how our heart rate varies from beat to beat is one way we can know what's happening in fibromyalgia. It can be measured with fancy heart rate monitors or simple wearable devices like I'm wearing here. Heart rate variability basically refers to the natural beat-to-beat changes in our heart rate, and it reflects the balance between these 2 opposing modes of the autopilot nervous system. Rather than being perfectly regular, a healthy heart actually displays subtle changes from beat to beat. It reflects a dynamic balance as the heart responds to lots of different bodily inputs, things like breath and posture and movement and temperature. Think of it like a jam session with a few different jazz players that are each kind of adapting to each other's output in a flexible and even slightly chaotic way. This is normal, and this is called high heart rate variability. And it shows a healthy balance between the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Basically, it shows that you're mostly living in the rest and digest mode, and only when there's, danger around, swapping into the fight or flight mode. Kind of think of it as a fluid and adaptable mode. But a heart rate that instead has little variability and is just regular and rigid like a metronome, boom, 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 it's really only responding to one powerful and overriding message, and that is to fight or flee. A lower heart rate variability shows that the balance has been skewed to the sympathetic nervous system mode. and we really lost a lot of our fluidity and adaptability. I don't want you to think that the rigid heart rate is all bad. It's actually really useful to generate quick life-saving responses, when there's danger. But it becomes damaging, becomes problematic when it's constant, and that's what we see in fibromyalgia. A 24/7 sympathetic nervous system response really triggers the chain reaction of fibromyalgia, those tense muscles and light sleep and inflammation and brain fog. At least 14 different studies have assessed heart rate variability in fibromyalgia compared to healthy controls and showed there's definite abnormalities there. Consistently, and this is some of the most consistent findings we see in the whole scientific literature looking at what's happening in the body in fibromyalgia. Very consistently, we see this decreased heart rate variability or low heart rate variability. This is bad. And authors, I'm not the only one that has noticed this. Authors of one study said, these findings reinforce the hypothesis of the potential role of the dysfunctional autonomic nervous system in the pathogenesis or development of fibromyalgia. To sum up, heart rate variability tests reveal that the sympathetic nervous system is absolutely running the show in fibromyalgia. You can find more in-depth coverage of this topic and many others, including all the scientific references at fibroresearch.org. For treatment information, go to my book, The FibroManual, which was just released in an audio form. I'm very excited. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that this video is helpful in your journey to understanding fibromyalgia.